So, as I mentioned earlier, we will look into Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where 21 times it is stated that the inner controller, the super soul, is the soul of all the souls and all entities, all material entities, and the soul of each soul. This is Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the ones in big font. This is the text of the Upanishad itself. The one in slightly smaller font. Uh, this is the commentary of Ramanuja. He's an Acharya who appeared in the Ramanuja line. We will just look at the main text of the Upanishad. It's just convenient for me to have this particular edition. Mm. Just to refresh, Sri Ramanujacharya had quoted in his Bhagavad-gita commentary that the Supreme Lord has been described as the soul of various elements, and the conglomeration of all these elements is what is the field. And the spirit souls, the jivatmas, these are the kshatragyas, these are the knowers of the field. And he is the soul of the souls. He's also the soul of the field of material activities. So since he is described as their soul, they have to be described as their bodies, as his bodies. Not his own body, his own Satchidananda body, not that. But in an extended sense, if the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters into the universe, into each universe as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, then it is because of him that the universe starts functioning. So he has to be described as the soul of the universe, because just as when the soul leaves a body, the body stops functioning. So when Garbhodakashayi Vishnu leaves a Brahmanda, that Brahmanda stops functioning. So he has to be described as the soul of the universe. And indeed, you do find in the scriptures such expressions. Conversely, the Brahmanda will have to be described as a body of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Of course, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu has his own Satchidananda body. We are not talking about that. We are talking about his extended body. Therefore, we talk about the universal form, the universal body. This is the extended body. So the living entities are also extended bodies of the Supreme Lord, because the Supreme Lord is inside each living entity also. This Supreme Lord is also present in earth, water, fire, air, ether, and so earth, water, fire, air, ether will have to be described as the extended bodies of the Supreme Lord. This has been spelled out very graphically in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. 21 instances are given to explain the position of the inner ruler. The inner ruler refers to the super soul, Paramatma. So let me bring it out here. The question that has been raised is Antaryaminam Bruhi iti. Tell me about the indwelling Paramatma who rules over everyone and everything. So yah prithivyam tishtan prithivya antaraha yam prithivī naveda yasya prithivī shariram yah prithivīm antaraha yamayatyeshata atmantaryamyamritaha. He who stays within earth, earth refers to the element earth, who is different from earth, whom earth does not know, whose body is earth, who is inside earth and controls earth. He is your Atma. He is the immortal indwelling ruler. This is 3.7.3 of Vidvad-ranjana. Famous state now. Yopsutishthan abhyontaro yama pona vidur yasyapah shariram yopo antaraha yam mayatyeshata atmantaryamyamrita. He who stays within water, who is different from water, whom water does not know, whose body is water, who is inside water and controls water, is your Atma. He is the immortal Antaryami, indwelling ruler. It has been explained that is your Atma means he is your immortal Atma. Immortal in the sense that the one who can never ever be subject to bondage by delusion. Yo gnau tishtan agner antaro yamagner naveda. Similarly, it is described. He who is within fire, who is different from fire, whom fire does not know, whose body fire is, who controls fire from within, is your immortal Atma, the indwelling ruler, the Paramatma. So in that way, he who is within space, who is different from space, whom space does not know, whose body is space, who controls space from within, he is your immortal Atma. He is the Antaryami, the inner controller. He who is within air or Vayu, whom Vayu does not know, whose body Vayu is, who controls Vayu from within, he is your immortal Atma, the inner controller, Antaryami. He who is in the heavens, who is different from the heavens. Heavens meaning Dyav, you can take Dyav as sky, whom the sky does not know, whose body the sky is, who is within the sky and who controls it. He is your Atma, he is your immortal Atma. He is the inner controller. He who is within the sun, whom the sun does not know. Or he who is within the sun, who is different from the sun, whom the sun does not know, whose body the sun is, and who controls the sun from within, he is your immortal Atma, the Antaryami, the inner controller, he who is within the directions. Similarly, he who is within the stars and the moon, he who is within ether, he who is within darkness, he who is within light, he who is within all beings, he who is within prana, he who is within speech, he who is within the eyes, he who is within the ears, he who is within the mind, he who is within the skin, he who is within the soul. Vijnana. The soul is sometimes described as Vijnana Brahma. The Supreme Lord is described as Ananda Brahma, whereas the soul is Vijnana Brahma. Srila Ramanuja-bhashya has pointed out in his writings that there is another version of the Vidvad-ranjana Upanishad. This is the Kanva Shakha. There is a Madhyandina Shakha, another version in which this particular verse, Yo Vijnane Tishtan Vijnana Dantaro Yam Vijnanam Naveda, instead of this you have Yo Atmani Tishtan Atmanamantaro Yam Atma. So you have Yo Atmani Tishtan Atmanantaro Yam Atma Naveda Yasya Atma Shariram, like that it goes. Parallel passage. It also has 21 instances, but just this particular verse, instead of Vijnana, that's a reference to the Atma. So Sri Ramanuja-bhashya points out that in that case the meaning would be he who stays within the Atma, he who is different from the Atma, he whom the Atma does not know, he whose body the Atma is, and he who controls the Atma from within is your Atma. He is your the immortal, indwelling controller. So from this it is very clear that there is a distinction, permanent distinction between the Jivatma and Paramatma, and this is on the liberated platform, because here the absolute truth pertaining to the indwelling controller is described, and he is very much described as being different from various aspects of material nature, and he's also described as being different from the soul, because he stays within the soul. He's different from the soul, very explicit. The soul does not know him. The soul is his body, and he controls the soul from within. So on the basis of that, we understand that that is a factual distinction. But the soul is described as his body. This is a point which we'll soon come to. Then he who stays within semen, whom semen doesn't know, and so on. So anyway, the Upanishad continues. Very, very interesting, extremely interesting. Anyway, I'll deal with that later. So, idameva antaryamiktaya sarvakshetra jnanam atmatvena avasthanam bhagavat samanadhikaranyena vyapadesha hetuhu. So, because the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the inner controller of all the kshetragyas, of all the atmas. He is situated as their atma. He is their soul. Because of this, material nature and the souls have been equated with him. Samanadhikaranya, equation, has been equated. Sri Ramanuja-bhashya then gives some examples from Bhagavad-gita itself and gives an explanation. Aham atma gudakesha sarvabhutashaya stitaha na tadasti vina yatsyan maya bhutam characharam na tadasti vina vishtabhyahamidam kritsnam ekamshena sthito jagat iti purastat uprishtach abhidaya madhye samanadhikaranyena vyapadishati adityanam aham vishnu ityadina. We find, for instance, 10th chapter, you find a series of equations. Adityanam aham Vishnu. Among the Adityas, I am Vishnu. Amongst these categories I'm this, and in those categories I'm that. Krishna goes on saying this. Several times he says this. 10th chapter he says, 7th chapter he speaks, 9th chapter he speaks. So he's equating himself with so many different items. Why does he do that? So Ramanuja-bhashya points out, taking this 10th chapter equations as an example, before he begins equating, he says that Gudakesha, Arjuna, I am the soul of all. I am situated within all the creatures. After all these equations, he says, nothing can exist without me. Nothing moving or non-moving. Indeed, I am present inside everything with a fragment of myself. I'm present in this entire universe. I'm present inside it just with a fragment of myself. So, before and after these equations, Krishna makes it clear that they are different from him and that they are dependent on him and that he is within them. And in the course of these equations, he goes on saying that I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. So from this, what do we understand? We understand that because they are under him, they are his bodies, therefore Krishna equates them with him. So similarly, here in this 13th chapter, when Krishna says that you should know that I am also the knower of the fields. What it means is the field and the knower of the field are being identified by Krishna as himself. In the same sense, it is in this very sense that he is them. They are all under him, they are his bodies. And therefore he is identifying himself with them. Yadidam kshetra kshetragyo vivekam vishayam tayoho madatmakatva vishayam cha jnanam uktam taddeva upadeyam jnanam. So this knowledge which discriminates between the body and the knower of the body and which refers to him as being the soul of the soul and the soul of the body, this Krishna accepts as relevant knowledge worthy of being acquired. This way of equation clarifies that because the body is entirely under the control of the soul, therefore the body is identified with the soul conventionally. It is in this sense that there is this equation. This kind of equation is dealt with everywhere. Even when you open the newspaper, you see Washington is unhappy with Beijing. What is the meaning of that? Washington is just some city. Beijing is another city. So what does that mean? Well, actually, Washington, by Washington, we are not talking of actually Washington, we are talking of the American government. It is located in one place. Beijing refers to the Chinese government. So here we see an equation. Or you hear that Brazil wins the World Cup this year. Brazil wins the World Cup this year. What does that mean? It actually refers to football match. Brazil refers to the national football team that represents Brazil. So here you find Brazil being equated with its football team. So if you carefully think about it, we use these kind of equations left, right, center, everywhere. So there's nothing strange with Ramanuja-bhashya's explanation here, that the soul of an entity is being identified with that. Actually, the inner controller of that entity is being identified with that. when you look at the newspaper, you'll instantly understand it. केचिदाहुः क्षेत्रज्ञं चापि मां विद्धि इति सामानाधिकरण्येन एकत्वम् अवगम्यते. Some say, who are these some? That refers to followers of Shankaracharya, Bhaskaracharya, Yadava Prakashacharya. Shankaracharya taught the philosophy of Kevaladvaita, exclusive monism. Bhaskara taught an ideology called Aupadhika Bhedaveda, designation based difference and non-difference. Yadava Prakash also taught a similar ideology. Basically, they are impersonalists who deny eternal spiritual variegatedness. They were predecessors to Sri Ramanuja-bhashya. So they state with regard to this verse of Bhagavad-gita, we understand from Lord Krishna's statement that you should know that I am also the knower of the body. From this, it is clear that there is oneness, that there is only one soul. There is only the Supreme Soul, who is himself the living entity. Tatascha Ishwarasya eva satah ajnanad kshetragyatvam iva bhavati iti abhyupagantavyam. So it must be accepted that it is that Supreme Soul himself who out of delusion has become the kshetragya, the knower of the field. He has become the jiva. Must be accepted. Tannivrityarthaha cha ayam ekatva upadeshaha. And in order to get out of that delusion, that ignorance, this Krishna is actually reminding everyone of the truth, because by remembering the fact, one can get out of ignorance. Anena cha aptattama bhagavat upadeshena rajjuhu iyam na sarpaha iti apta upadeshena sarpatva brahman nivritti vat kshetragyatva brahmaha nivartate iti. Just as if you are in a delusion, thinking that a rope is a snake and you're terrified, and a person who is completely trustworthy says, no, this is not a snake, don't be terrified, it's just a rope. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, he is most trustworthy. So he says, I am all the living entities. The living entities are me. We are one. Ultimately, we are all one. So then this delusion that you have, that you are a spirit soul different from God, goes away. Just as the delusion that this rope is the snake goes away when you hear a most trustworthy person explain to you that no, actually it is not a snake, it is just a rope. So this contention is presented by followers of Shankara, Bhaskara and Yadav Prakash. So Ramanujacharya, he writes, te prashtavyaha ayam upadeshta bhagavan vasudevah parameshwarah kim atma yathatmya sakshatkarena nivritta jnanah uta na iti. So these people should be asked the question, this person who is teaching all this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva, the Supreme Controller, has he become freed from ignorance by direct perception of the factual nature of the Atma or not? Nivritta jnanaha chet nirvishesha chinmatraika swarupe atmani atat rupa adhyasa asambhavanaya kaunteya adi bheda darshanam तान् प्रति उपदेश आदि व्यापारः च न संभवति. If his ignorance has come to an end, then the perception of differences amongst Arjuna and others, and activities such as teaching them and so on, cannot happen, because it would be impossible to superimpose ignorance through such variegated perception on the soul, which is pure, undistinguished, mere consciousness. That's exactly how the impersonalists describe the Supreme. अथ आत्मयाथात्म्य साक्षात्कार अभावाद अनिवृत्त अज्ञानः तर्हि तस्य अज्ञत्वादेव आत्मज्ञान उपदेश आरंभः न संभवति उपदेक्षन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनः तत्त्वदर्शिनः इति हि उक्तम्. And if he is not freed from ignorance, because he is not attained direct perception of the factual nature of the soul, Atma, self, then because he is ignorant, it is not possible for factual instructions on the nature of the soul to commence. See, in the Vedantic system, teaching has to conclude with getting the student to know things, understand things, remove their doubts, and then bring them to the point of realization, spiritual realization, the same spiritual realization, the same level of spiritual realization that the teacher has. He should be able to bring it out within the student also. So that cannot happen. Upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas sattvadarshinaha. The wise who see the truth, that means who had direct perception of spiritual reality, they will teach you this knowledge. Krishna says this, 4th chapter. So Krishna himself would not go against his own teaching. He would not teach. So, and even that teaching would be useless. So what Sri Ramanuja-bhashya has brought out here is, see, either Krishna is spiritually realized fully, or is not fully spiritually realized. According to these impersonalists, one who is spiritually realized, he knows that all the souls are same. So if you, this point Sri Ramanuja will bring up in the 2nd chapter also. Here he is summarizing that he has already explained this particular point in further detail. According to these impersonalists, ultimate spiritual realization is that you realize that you are one with God and all the souls, it's all one. In reality, there is only Brahman. It's due to ignorance that there is this conception of the jivas. So you realize ultimately it's all one. But in that case, you would not engage in a perception of differentiation of varieties. Here we see Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. If Krishna and Arjuna are ultimately one, Krishna would not need to teach himself. As Sri Ramanuja explains elsewhere, nobody except for an insane character will seriously try to enlighten the reflection of himself on a mirror. because he clearly knows that he is his reflection. Why does he have to teach his own reflection unless he is in an insane state of mind? So that would not happen. And if Krishna is not fully spiritually realized, then this entire project of teaching Arjuna is also a waste of time. Ataha evam adivadaha अनाकलित श्रुति स्मृति इतिहास पुराण न्याय सदाचार स्ववाक्य विरोधैः स्ववच्च स्थापन दुराग्रहैः अज्ञानिभिः जगन्मोहनाय प्रवृत्ताः इति अनादरणीयाः. Therefore, arguments of this kind are meant to be disregarded. Arguments of this kind means all these kind of impersonal, stupid arguments are meant to be disregarded. They are being propagated. They have been propagated in order to delude the world by ignorant people. What kind of ignorant people? People who have not taken into consideration the opposition to their teachings from the Shruti, Smriti, the Itihasas, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Puranas, Nyaya or logic, Sadachara, appropriate people of good behavior, which is only possible when you become fully spiritually realized, that we know from the scriptures. And without taking into consideration opposition to their teachings from their own words. These people, swavachasthapana duragrahi, they are having the evil intention to simply establish the validity of their own words. That's all. So therefore, this ideology should just be rejected. Atra idam tattvam. So this is the point here. Achidvastunah chidvastunah parasya brahmana. Some Shruti texts, parasya brahmana bhogyattvena bhoktattvena ishittattvena cha swarupa vivekamahu kashana shrutayaha. Some Shruti texts speak of the distinction in the natures of matter, which is achit. Achit means that which is not conscious. Spirit, which is referred to as chit, which means that which is conscious. And the Supreme Brahman, by describing the inert matter or unconscious matter as bhogya, that which is taken as an object of enjoyment. The conscious spirit souls as the enjoyers, those who are trying to enjoy matter, and the Supreme Brahman as the controller. So now Sri Ramanuja-bhashya quotes these Shruti texts. Asman mayi srijate vishwametat tasminschanyo maya sanniruddha. Shvetashvatar. The possessor of Maya, Mayi, the possessor of Maya, which is who is the Lord, this is the Supreme Lord. He creates this world from Prakriti. And somebody else is bound to this due to Maya. So notice this somebody else refers to the Jivatma. Mayam tu prakritim vidyan, mayinam tu maheshwaram. You should know that Maya is Prakriti. and that the possessor of Maya is the great Lord. Again, Shvetashvatara. Ksharam prathanam amritaksharam harah ksharatmano vishate deva ekaha. Again, Shvetashvatara. The pradhana is destructible, kshara, whereas the living entity is undying and indestructible. Technically, he is referred to as Hara here. But there's only one Lord who controls both this destructible pradhana and the soul. Notice that all three have been brought up here. Amritaksharam haraha iti bhokta nirdishyate pradhanam bhokyatvena harati iti haraha. Here, the word hara refers to the enjoyer, because he seizes pradhana as an object of enjoyment. Therefore, he is called hara in this context. Sa karanam karanadhipadhipo nachasya kaschit janita nachadhipaha. Shvetashvatara again. He is the cause. He is the Lord of the senses. Now the Lord of the senses is the Jivatma. So he is the Lord of the Jivatma. He has no progenitor. And he has no one lording over him. Pradhana kshetragya patir guneshaha. He is the Lord of Prakriti, referred to as Pradhana here. And he is the Lord of the Kshetragya too. And he is the Lord of the modes of nature, Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna. Again, it is from Shvetashvatara. Patim Vishwasyatmeshwaram Shashwatam Shivamachyutam. Taittiriya Narayana Upanishad. He is the Lord of the universe, the ruler of the individual selves. He is eternal, he is auspicious, and he is inexhaustible, infallible. Gya, gya, dvav, vajav, vishanisho. Printing mistake. Should be long. Vishanisho. Again from Shvetashvatara. There are two. The one in knowledge and the one in ignorance. Both of them are unborn. One is the Lord and the other is not the Lord. So very clear reference to the Paramatma and the Jivatma. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yovidadhati kama. Already saw this. There is one eternal amongst many eternals. There is one conscious being who is amongst many conscious beings. And that one grants the desires of the many. Again from Shvetashvatara, of course, it is also found in Katha Upanishad. Bhokta bhogyam preritaram chamatva. This is a phrase from Shvetashvatara. Having known about the enjoyer, the enjoyed, and the one who is impelling, the one who is their Lord. So here, Bhokta, the enjoyer, refers to the living entity. Bhogya refers to, or that which is enjoyed refers to matter, Prakriti. Preritaram or the impeller refers to the Supreme Lord, Shvetashvati. Prathagatmanam preritaram chamatva jushtastatastena amritattvameti. Knowing the enjoyer, who is the Atma actually, knowing the Atma, the impeller, to be separate. Being blessed by him, Jushtaha. Tataha tena amritatvameti. Jushtaha tataha tena. And after being blessed by him, amritatvameti, he attains immortality, which means he attains a state of liberation. Tayoranyah pipalam, that's also Shvetashvati. This is Mundaka Upanishad. Tayoranyah pipalam swadvatyanashnan anyo bhijakashiti. One of the two, there are two birds in a tree. One of the two eats the sweet pipala fruit, while the other, without eating at all, brilliantly shines. So that refers to the Supreme Being. Ajamekam lohita shukla krishnam bhakti praja srijamanam sarupa ajohyeko jushamano nushete jahatyena bhukta bhogam. Ajonyah, Shvetashvatar again. Ajamekam lohita shukla krishnam bhakti praja srijamanam sarupa ajohyeko jushamano nushete jahatyena bhukta bhogam ajonyah. There is one unborn female being, Aja, Lohita Shukla Krishnam. She's red, white, and black. Bahvi Prajas Jamanam Sarupa. She produces several offspring of the same kind as herself. Ajohyekaha Jushamanaha Manushete. There is a Aja, which means this is different from the Aja. So there is another being who is unborn, male, Aja, who is in love with her. And he sleeps next to her. He's close to her. Jahatyenam bhukta bhogam ajonyah. And there's another male unborn, Aja. It's different from this Aja. Who gives her up, having enjoyed her. Okay. So, what does this refer to? This Lohita Shukla Krishna refers to Prakriti, material nature, which is Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic. Shukla, white, represents Sattvaguna. Lohita, red, represents Rajoguna. Krishnam refers to black, Tamoguna. So Prakriti goes on producing various forms, similar to herself. And that is, and she's unborn, meaning eternal. Prakriti is eternal. Then there are two other males. One is attracted to her, is with her. This refers to the conditioned soul who is attracted to Maya. And there's the liberated soul who previously enjoyed her and who has now given up. He's done with it. This is the liberated soul, the one who had enjoyed before and who's gone out. That's from Shvetashvata Upanishad. It's all famous verses actually. Gaurana Dyantavati Sa Janitri Bhuta Bhavini. Chullika Upanishad. Srila Baladev Vidya-bhushana Prabhu has quoted it in Vidvad-ranjana also. It's coming from Chullika Upanishad. There's a cow which has no beginning or end. She is the mother and source of all creatures. So this refers to Prakriti, and creatures refer to the conditioned souls of material existence. Samane vrikshe purusho nimagno nishaya shochati mukhyamana chishtam yada pashyat tanyameshamasya mahimanamiti vita shokaha. On the same tree, the living entity sits bewildered. Go back. Trace it all. In the same tree, there is a soul who is in distress. Anishaya shochati mukhyamanaha. He is in lamentation because of the absence of the Lord. In other words, he is powerless. He is bewildered. Shochati is in lamentation. Jushtam yada pashyatanyamesham. When he sees another, that means the Isha, the Supreme Lord, Isham. Asya mahimanam iti vita shokaha. Then he also becomes free from lamentation. He previously was in lamentation. Now he becomes free from lamentation, like the Lord, having attained his glory, having understood his glory, his mahima. Atrapi, here in the Bhagavad-gita also, ahankara ityam me bhinna prakritir ashtadha. Bhumirapo nalavayu khammano vidirevacha ahankara ityam me bhinna prakritir ashtadha. Material nature is of 8 types. It's separated into 8. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. Aparayamita spanyam prakritim vidhi me param. Know that there is a superior prakriti, different from this. Jiva-bhuta mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. Oh, mighty aunt, that consists of the Jiva-atmas. The superior, because of the superior prakriti, this world is being maintained. Sarvabhutani kaunteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaye punastani kalpado visrujamyaham. At the conclusion of a kalpa, all beings get into my prakriti. Again, at the beginning of a kalpa, I create them. Prakritim swam avashtabhya visrajami punah punaha. Utilizing this prakriti, which is mine, I repeatedly create. Bhutagramam yom kritsnama vasham prakritir vashat. I repeatedly create all of these creatures, this entire body of beings, entire kritsnama. Avasham, you are helpless. Prakritir vashat, because they are under the vasha or under the subjugation of prakriti, material nature. Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam. Hetunanena kaunteya jagat viparivartate. Under my supervision, prakriti generates everything, including the moving and the non-moving. It is because of this, O Kaunteya, that the world is moving on. It undergoes its parivartana, transformations. Prakritim purusham chaiva vidyanadi ubhavapi. Right here in 13th chapter. Know that the prakriti and purusha are beginningless, both of them. ममयोनिर् महद्ब्रह्म तस्मिन् गर्भं दधाम्यहम् संभवः सर्वभूतानां ततो भवति भारत. The womb from which this universe is born is Mahad Brahma, is the great Brahman belonging to me. Sometimes Prakriti is also called Brahman. Sometimes the Supreme Lord is called Brahman. He says Param Brahman. The living entity is also called Brahman, Jiva Brahma. And then you have Prakriti also is called Brahman, Mahad Brahma. Sambhava Sarvabhutanam Tato Bhavati. It is from this Mahad Brahma or Prakriti that all creatures are born. So their birth is made possible from her, O Bharata. Regarding this particular verse, Sri Ramanuja-bhashya himself has given an explanation. Kritsna Jagad Yonibhutam Mahad Brahma Madiyam Prakrityakyam Bhuta Sukshmam Achid Vastu Yat Tasmin Chetanakyam Garbham Samyojayami. The great Brahman, which is the source of generation of the entire world, known as Prakriti. It's filled with gross and subtle matter. And it is Achit Vastu. It is not conscious. Tasmin Chetanakyam Garbham Samyojayam. I impregnate it with the Chetanas, with the conscious beings. Tataha mat sankalpa kritat. And then by my desire, by my will, chiddachit samsargad eva, devadisthavara antanam achin mishranam sarvabhutanam sambhavaha bhavati ityartha. Then the birth of all creatures, which means all creatures who are now mixed with matter. This refers to from the devas up to the immobile creatures. All of them because of the combination of matter and spirit, which is due to my desires. This is the meaning of this verse. Shrutav bhuta sukshmam brahma iti nirdishtam. In the Shruti also, Brahman, the gross and subtle, the totality of gross and subtle matter has been referred to as Brahman. Tasmad etat brahma namarupam annam chit jayate. From that it is from him that this Brahman, consisting of names and the world of matter and spirit, which is characterized by names and forms, is born. So here we see that the world of matter and spirit has been referred to as Brahman, the Bhuta Sukshma. Then एवं भोक्तृ रूपेण अवस्थितयोः सर्वावस्था अवस्थितयोः चिदचितोः परमपुरुष शरीरतया तन्नियाम्यत्वेन तद् अपृथक् स्थितिं परमपुरुषस्य च आत्मत्वम् आहुः काश्चन श्रुतयः. There are some Shruti texts which point out that spirit and matter, which are under all circumstances situated at as the enjoyer and the enjoyed, as described above, as previously described so far. It is described that they are having the Supreme Lord as their Atma, their soul, because they constitute extended bodies of the Supreme Soul. Because they are under his control because they cannot exist separate from him. Therefore, they are described as being. The Supreme Lord is described as being their Atma. So some Shruti texts speak like this. So he gives the first instance. Vidvad-ranjana, we already saw this. यः पृथिव्यां तिष्ठन् पृथिव्या अन्तरो यं पृथ्वी न वेद यस्य पृथ्वी शरीरं यः पृथ्वीम् अन्तरो यमयति इत्यारभ्य य आत्मनि तिष्ठन्नात्मनोऽन्तरो यमात्मा न वेद यस्यात्मा शरीरं य आत्मानम् अन्तरो यमयति सत्त आत्मान्तर्याम्यं वृत्तः इति. He is now referring to the Madhyandina version of Vidvad-ranjana. 21 instances where it is stated that you should know him who stays within the earth, within the element earth, who is different from earth, whom the earth does not know, whose body earth is, who controls earth from within, and so on, up to he who stays within the Atma, who is different from the Atma, whom the Atma does not know, whose body the Atma is, who controls the Atma from within. You should know that he is the immortal Atma, the Antaryami, the inner controller. Tatha yasya prithvi shariram yah prithvimantare sancharan yam prithvi na veda ityarabhya yasya aksharam shariram yo aksharam antare sancharan yam aksharam na veda yasya mrityuhu shariram yo mrityum antare sancharan yam mrityurna veda sa esha sarvabhutantaratma pahatapatma divyo deva eko narayanaha. So then there's a parallel passage from Subala Upanishad. Let me trace it out. Okay, this is the Subala Upanishad, part 7. Antasharire nihito guhayam aja eko nityo. There is an eternal unborn who is within the heart, within the cave, which refers to the heart, within the body. Yasya prithvi shariram yah prithvi mantare sancharan yam prithvi na veda, whose body the element earth is, who is moving about within the element earth, whom the element earth does not know, yasyapa shariram, and so on. Who water does not know, whose body the water is and whom water doesn't know, whose body light is, whom light does not, whose body Vayu is. Vayu is a printing mistake, typing mistake. Vayu. Similarly, Akasha, Mana, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta, Avyakta, Akshara, Mrityu. So all of these are described as the bodies of that being, including Mrityu, he whose body Mrityu is, he who is wandering within Mrityu, whom Mrityu does not know. Sa esha sarvabhutantaratma pahatapatma divyo deva eko narayana. And that is the one divine Lord, Narayana, who is beyond all sins. He is the inner soul. He is a soul who is indwelling within all the creatures. He is that one. So, if we put two and two together, we come to a clear understanding that the one described in the Vidvad-ranjana Upanishad as the Antaryami is none other than Narayana. And Narayana refers to a particular individual because Narayana, the last na, has a dot below it in the Roman transliteration. And according to Panini's grammar, this refers to a particular individual who has that name. It is not to be taken as an adjective. There are certain names in Sanskrit can refer to Sangya, can refer to particular names, but sometimes they can also function as adjectives. Anyway, this is a part of Sanskrit grammar. But anyway, Narayana is not an adjective. It is the name of a person. It is the name of a person. अत्र मृत्युशब्देन तमशब्दवाच्यं सूक्ष्म अवस्थम् अचिद्वस्तु अभिधीयते. Here Ramanujacharya, he points out that the mrityu that is spoken of in Subala Upanishad refers to tamas or darkness, which refers to matter in its subtle state. Asyameva Upanishadi. In this very Upanishad, it was pointed out earlier in Subala Upanishad. Avyaktam akshare liyate, aksharam tamasi liyate, tamah pare deva eki bhuya tishthatvi. The Avyakta is merged into the Akshara. The Akshara is merged into Tamas. Tamas is merged into the Supreme Lord. So from this we understand that Mrityu refers to Tamas. Antah pravishta shasta jananam sarvatma iti cha. There's also the Taittiriya Aranyaka statement that the one who has entered into all, he is the ruler of all creatures. He is the soul of everyone.